Hello and welcome to this short course about supporting children with friendship issues. This is one of a series of courses which has been funded by Resilient Rutland, which is a national lottery funded programme. It's aimed at parents and carers who are looking to support their child with friendship issues in the primary age group, so up to about the age of 11. But there are ideas in here that might be interesting to parents of older children and also to other people who are supporting, working with or caring with children in another capacity. I really hope that you find these ideas useful. Try exploring them with the child that you have in mind rather than just exploring them on your own. When you look at these ideas together, then you might be able to think about how to make them best work for you and your family or the child that you care about. The first idea that I'm going to share with you today is a really simple one. Just listen. My grandmother always taught me that I had 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, and this is never truer than when we are parenting children who are facing challenges with their friendships. They don't necessarily need us to fix and change things. Sometimes they need us just to zip it and listen to what they have to say. A helpful thing to do here can be to think about building a habit of listening. So building listening to your child into your daily or weekly routine. Now this might sound strange, but we're often very, very busy, and it might be that it's difficult for our child to know when there are times when we will really have the time to listen to what they have to say. So having a look at your typical day or week and noticing where there might be moments there when you can do really good listening to your child and building a habit of just letting them know that you're there, you're available to them, you're ready to listen if they want to talk can be really helpful. Things like a commute into school might be a good time for this, or bedtime or bath time might be times when you can make yourself emotionally and physically available to your child. The next tip around listening just really draws on what my grandma told me about 1 mouth, 2 ears, and this is saying less and just listening more. And this is just about consciously checking in when we're having conversations with our child, when they're opening up about their friendships and the issues that they might be facing there, actually just stopping ourselves from speaking and providing more space where our child can fill the conversation rather than us. So saying less and listening more. Coupled with this comes the idea of embracing the silence. Now, this feels awkward in the extreme when we are so used to jumping in and filling every gap. We have busy lives and busy minds at the moment. And so quiet, stillness, silence can feel kind of awkward. And our temptation is to jump in and fill any gap in conversation. But that stillness, that silence, that quiet is really, really important. And when we hold back what we might have the temptation to say, then actually we find that our child will often fill those gaps in conversation themselves. And then we get to hear what it is that's on their mind, and they get to explore this on their terms, finding ways to tell their story about what has happened. A helpful tip here is one that I often use when I'm training because I feel that urge to fill the gaps as well. I always wear a watch and I'll just notice, and I think I'm going to give it a minute and then I shall speak, and I literally set myself a timer. The reason I do that is because silences in conversation feel really difficult and the time stretches, and so it feels like it's been an age, and when you look at your watch it's actually been about 10 seconds. So actually saying, I'm going to allow this silence to happen, I'm going to lean into that listening, and I will not say another word for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever feels appropriate for you and your child, but allow that silence to happen. It's important too to understand that in those silent moments when you might be kind of just sat there twiddling your thumbs going, oh, this is awkward, for your child, it may well be that their noisy head is full of things. So you're hearing silence, can hear a penny drop, and they've got all the different thoughts in their head, trying to work out how to say the things they need to say, trying to find words for things that perhaps they've never named before, and wondering how much they're happy to share at this time and how to do so. So things might feel quite noisy and chaotic in their head, so providing a bit of silence so that they can begin to order their thoughts, and then when they're ready, they might fill that silence instead of you. If you find that the sharing isn't really happening, your child isn't talking to you, and you've got a feeling there's something on their mind, then finding ways to be companionably alongside them whilst you do things can be really helpful. So you might busy yourself with tasks that they know are kind of low stakes, so they could interrupt you, but in their presence. So you might do cleaning when you're nearby. I will often choose to knit in the vicinity of my children. They know that these are tasks that can be interrupted, or they can talk to me whilst I continue with those tasks. Also think about really simple stuff like going for a walk. Walking and talking often feels much more manageable. It also makes those silences feel less awkward as well. So walking and talking is good. The other benefit of walking and talking is when we're alongside each other, this feels less confrontational than when we sit kind of face to face like this. Similarly, you might find that if you go on car journeys with your child or train journeys and you sit next to each other, that again, sometimes the conversation will begin to happen a little bit more naturally in those moments. It just feels less confrontational, and they're not having to see every expression on your face as they tell you something which they might worry about how it's going to land. Next thing to remember about being a good listener to your younger child is that listening doesn't have to come through talking and listening in the traditional way. It can be through you listening to your child's creativity, through play or through art or through music or through whatever other means that your child finds that they can begin to communicate. And what we need to do here is just to be ready to tune in to those different ways that our child might choose to talk to us. So if, for example, we find that they are role playing or using their toys to represent something, just being a little bit curious, just really listening to what's happening in their play there, and maybe asking the odd question about what happens next, or how do you think this character feels, for example. The final thing to remember when it comes to listening is that it's all about quality rather than quantity. You do not need to have hours and hours and hours of time that you can spare to listen to your child. But what you do need is to make sure that when you do make a little bit of time, that it's really high quality listening time. This means turning off your phone. This means turning off all your other devices, making sure that even for just a few minutes, your child knows that they are the absolute centre of your world, that they have your undivided attention, that you are truly, truly listening to what they have to say. All these ideas will help to create an environment where a child can begin to speak and explore what's going on with their friendship issues if they feel the need to begin to talk about that. Next, we're going to ask ourselves truthfully, honestly, are we the kind of friend that we would like our children to be? Because we've got to remember that when we live it, our children learn it. They're watching us all the time, and we will find that they will mimic and imitate what they learn from the trusted adults around them. So if we want our children to be good friends and to have happy, constructive, fun, healthy friendships with their friends, then we need to have a look at ourselves and our role as a friend and our friendships, and see whether we see reflected in our friendships what we'd hope to see in our children's friendships. There are some particular things that you might want to particularly help your child to aspire here to. So when you're looking at role modelling friendship to your child and thinking about what stories you share about your own friendships and the bits that you might lean into and really look to show and demonstrate through your actions, you might think about things like, how can we teach our children by showing them that we build ourselves up by building others up rather than breaking them down. Particularly in girls, this is a really important thing to try and instill from a really young age, because actually we all are stronger when we are kind to each other, when we build one another up, when we look for each other's strengths. But what can happen sometimes is that we spend a lot of time breaking each other down, and we end up with this kind of cattiness and cruelness that can happen. And this is sometimes because girls in particular, but not only girls, might sometimes feel that the way to elevate themselves within a social hierarchy is to bring everyone else down. But actually, when we are kind and we are giving and we look for and praise and compliment others, we all rise up together. So a question here would be, is this true of your friendship group? Do you build each other up or do you break each other down? What is your child observing happening in your friendships here? Building on this, we might think about how we compliment and praise others, and we might look to encourage our children, again through our actions and what we do each day. We would look to encourage our children to be quick to compliment and slow to insult. Quick to compliment, slow to insult. So that comes back to that idea of building up others. As an aside, and we thought about this in the self-esteem course as well, we need to role model the gracious receiving of compliments. We're generally pretty bad at that, so we might look to both show that we can give compliments, but also think about how we receive them graciously too. Finally, when it comes to role modelling friendship, we will all have our ups and downs, much as our children do, and we can think about role modelling how we problem solve when we do hit difficulties in our friendships as an adult. And here you might think about problem solving out loud. Wonder out loud about what's happening with your friends and how you can help them, or how you can overcome any challenges that you might be facing with regards to your friendships and the difficulties that might be going on there. As your child gets a little bit older, you might actually look to sometimes talk to them about these issues and ask for their opinion and troubleshoot it together. In just the same way that they might come to you and talk to you about what's going on with their friendships, and if there have been falling outs, you might actually look to ask their advice about how to support a friend or how to tackle a particular issue that you're facing with your friendships. If we have these kind of open and honest discussions with our children as they're growing up, as long as we make sure we're not giving them a burden of worry to hold, if we trust them and explore with them some of the things that are going on in our lives in an age and stage appropriate way, then we do often find we've got a really, really good, safe listener here who will listen to us as well as appreciate us listening to them. Remember, we're a team. A family is a team, and so growing your team members so that we can all be supportive of one another is a really nice thing to aspire to. We must never lose sight of how huge friendship difficulties feel to younger children. It can be really easy for us to be dismissive of what's going on for them because it feels little compared to the worries that we might have in our own life. But we need to remember that in the context of our child's life, these issues are genuinely really big. So that falling out in the playground that they're telling you about might feel to them like the equivalent of if you had a really, really terrible day at work and you lost a massive contract, or something went really wrong that mattered to you. This feels like that to them. It might not matter to us, but it really matters to them. When we listen to these things that seem little to us, we can consider it an investment in our child's future. The parent, the carer who listens when a child wants to talk about the falling out in a playground is the same parent or carer that a child will come to and talk to if they find themselves in an abusive relationship in their later years. The investment that we make early on in building those bonds, in listening, in letting them know that we care, that we're here, that it really does matter to us what's going on for them, lays really strong foundations for them being able to come to us and talk to us later on. But also, that aside, this little thing is huge to them, and feeling seen and heard and cared for by the adults in their life that matter makes a huge difference to how they feel and a huge difference to their ability to manage this. Friendship worries can weigh really heavily on a child's mind, and they can feel quite all-consuming. And again, remembering it might feel little to us, but it's really big to them, and it can be tiring and worrying and anxiety-inducing and just generally a little bit horrible. So what we can do as a parent, as a carer, is actually to offer some respite to those worries, giving them a break, giving them time out to think about something else and to feel something different for a little while. So one of the simplest things we can do is just to do something completely different with our child for a while. So we might have done a lot of listening and thinking and problem solving about the worry in hand, but sometimes the most important thing we can do is just leave it behind, shelf that worry and do something different, whether that's going for a walk or playing a game, doing some art, whatever it happens to be, something totally different that takes our mind off of the worry. It's also important sometimes here for us to actually give permission to our children to be joyous and have fun and to laugh. When they've got lots of stuff going on and weighing them down, it can feel almost like they're not allowed to be happy. So actually saying, it's okay to have fun, we can go back to the worry later, essentially. It's still going to be there, but right now it's okay to lean into that laughter, to be joyous, to have fun, to let go. If your child feels uncomfortable doing this, kind of walking away from the problem, which is omnipresent in their mind, it can be helpful to remind them that sometimes when we rest a worry, we put it to one side for a moment and we go and we focus on other things and we try to feel a different way. Sometimes resting a worry that way can actually help us to begin to try and solve it. When we're right there in the worry all the time, picking out the detail, sometimes we can't work out how to get through it. When we put it to one side for a while, we begin to think about any other thing, then our creative problem solving just kind of continues to happen there, and bingo, we know what we should be doing next. So rest the worry, think about something totally different, and sometimes that will actually help us with our problem solving of that concern. If you find that you're not able to move on with your child, they can't step away from the worry, they're going round and round and round and round in circles with this worry about a particular friendship issue, a helpful tip can be just to write it down and to bank it for later and say, this does matter, but we're not making any progress right now, so we're just going to write down where we got to, we're going to note it, or you can draw it, or whatever way you want to represent it, and we're just going to put it to one side for now. We'll pick up where we left off later, but let's shelf this worry and we will come back to it when we have done something else for a while. And if a child doesn't seem convinced that you're going to come back to it, tell them exactly when you will and make sure you do that. So you might say to them, right, we're going to shelf this worry until 3 p.m. and then we're going to have another think about it for half an hour. This all sounds a bit ridiculous and a bit kind of over the top, but it can make a really big difference. If a child is constantly picking apart and worrying about a particular friendship issue, it can take up all their time, and giving them some time off from that worry and then having prescribed times when we are allowed to worry about it, when we're going to explore it together for a discrete period of time, can be really helpful. Otherwise we find this just kind of leaks into every aspect of everyday life. We need permission to stop, to have fun, to think about something else sometimes. When it comes to friendship issues, it can be really tempting to kind of jump in and try and tell our child what to do and to try and fix their problems for them. That's not very helpful. It might make things just a little bit better in the very short term, but it doesn't help our child build the skills and confidence that they need to manage their friendships in the medium and the long term. So instead, we need to think of ourselves as a guide by the side. So we might be there on the sidelines, cheerleading, supporting, guiding, but we shouldn't be right in there helicoptering in and trying to solve the problem for them. Think about when you taught your child to ride a bike and how you had to hold on for a while until they were steady, and then you had to let go and you had to allow them to ride the bike on their own. this is like that. And like riding a bike with friendship issues, sometimes they will carry on and that's great. Sometimes they might crash, and we are there if they fall to help them back up again and to support them. But if we never let go of the bike, they will never ever learn to ride it. If they fall, and they will, then be prepared to support them and guide them and help them. Sometimes they might lose their confidence and you might find yourself putting the stabilizers back on the bike again for a while, giving them a little bit of extra support and help with how to manage their friendships, being there a little bit more. But we want to support where we can from the side, give them the confidence to try again, to get back on the bike, to give it another go, to try again with their friendships and see if they can use the new ideas and skills that you have taught them. The most helpful question you can ask your child when they're exploring their friendship difficulties with you is, how can I help? When we ask a child how we can help them, then it gives them the opportunity to ask for any advice or input that they do want from us. When that advice is sought from them, they're much more likely to hear it. When it's unsolicited and we just give them that advice when they didn't ask to be given it, they're much less likely to listen. When we ask, how can I help? Often we will find the answer is, you can't, just listen, and that's okay too. It's really important with friendship issues to understand that going through these issues is a really perfectly normal part of growing up for most children, and that actually they need the chance to learn, to explore, to experience this, and that each time they experience more of these friendship issues, then they're adding to their ability to manage again another time. So by just listening, by not necessarily doing anything, we provide a safe space in which our child can explore, can talk, can problem solve through this, and they can often work out for themselves what it is that they might need to do next. Sometimes our role is simply of listener and reassurer. So we might reassure them that sounds like a really good plan that you have, or that was really great problem solving, or why don't you give that a try and let's see how it went. All that said, we must, as parents and carers, be prepared to intervene if things go too far. Sometimes friendships really sour, and sometimes you might be worried about teasing or bullying, for example. This is never okay, and we should intervene early if we think that there is any concerns around bullying, for example. Talking to our child and get a really honest opinion about what's going on and what have been the triggers here and whether any harm is being done, and by harm we're thinking emotionally as well as physically. And if our child is deeply distressed, deeply upset, and this is something that's going on over a period of time, we absolutely must talk to other adults who can support the child. Most often that would mean talking to the school, but it might be talking to another setting that your child is involved in where this teasing or bullying is happening. But think carefully about how to respond to these issues and make sure that your child is on board with what you're doing. Sometimes they will say to you, you must promise not to tell anyone, you mustn't do anything, or this person will hate me even more. And we know that in order to keep our child safe, we've got to actually take some action. But if you can, think with them about who you're going to tell and what and when, and try to bring them along on this journey with you. Help them to understand why this is in their best interests. Finally, when things are going well, make sure you're nearby to celebrate. Actually enjoy their friendships with them and help them to recognise and capture those moments when friendship is doing what it does best on a good day, and it's bringing joy and laughter and fun, and they're making some really good and meaningful connections. Capture these moments, photograph them, write them down, and celebrate them with your child. They're really, really wonderful moments, and when you capture them, you can always reflect on them on a bad day, and they can help us by looking backwards to look forwards also. Thanks for watching. I hope that these really simple ideas gave you some pointers about how to start being a supportive parent or carer if your child is facing friendship difficulties. It really comes down to being a good role model, role modelling the kind of friendships we would hope our child to have, being a good listener, remembering, like my grandma told me, one mouth and two ears, and guiding from the side, remembering always that our child will never ever learn to do this if we don't learn to let go. Good luck with it. I hope that you found some ideas helpful here and that you enjoy exploring them with your child.